Well, good evening, everybody, and we are 10 minutes away from going live. So if you're watching this on after it's been posted, just jump ahead 10 minutes, and then you will be able to see what the show is going to be all about. And I'm just here to, I'm just here to make sure all the sound is working. I'm making sure that it's live streaming, and so and feel free to check, feel free to comment and share and stuff like that. This is going to be an incredible week of celebration with Walt Brown. And let's just see if we are on the Hydroplate channel. We are live streaming on the Hydroplate Week of Celebration, which is, it looks like we're streaming live there. There's two boxes there. The top one's the vertical and the bottom one should be the wide one. We are. I will turn the sound on for that if I can. Yep. Okay. So you won't hear that. And then we're going to jump into Facebook, and it's live streaming on Facebook. It couldn't be on the Hydroplate channel because there wasn't enough followers. And so, whoopsie, hopefully you're still there. Okay. Okay. And so live streaming on Facebook, we didn't have enough followers to put it on our Hydroplate channel. So it's going to be live streamed on Solidify Your Faith Facebook. And so we're just trying to get the word out there. We want to have the Hydroplate theory be considered as far as a viable theory. And let's see if you guys have any questions or comments. And everything looks like it's going really well. So we have 8 minutes, so you can get your popcorn. You can get ready. We will start sharply at 8 o'clock. And I think we are all ready. Let's see. Oh, yeah. As long as we're here, why don't I show you some sneak previews? You guys want to see some sneak previews for what's coming up? Oh, well, you know what we could do? We could show you some, let's see here. Let's add to the stage. Okay. You've seen that promo. We can give you a promo for tonight if you want to start sharing the promos. Let's do this. Okay, we can't add any more. We've got a full docket, so we're going to take this one off, possibly. Okay, we're going to take Dr. Welborn off, and then we are going to give you a treat. It looks like everything's going, so we are going to give you a treat of what's coming in about half an hour. And if you like it, you can share this with as many people as you can. We're going to give you, let's see where it is. Here we go. Check this out. I think you're going to enjoy this if you haven't seen it yet. Oh, yeah. Now I've got to leave, and then I've got to resize it. So I'm going to leave. So
10 grand, and Walt put up 10 grand. And I had two cashier's check, mine and Walt's, there on Saturday morning at the State University of New York at New Paltz. And there had been a tremendous amount of discussion in the student newspaper in the weeks leading up to that. So, and as everyone knows, Walt had tried for 30 years and not been able to get a debater. So I was really hyped and hoping with double the money that we would really be able to get something going. And I had been wolfing and bragging for several weeks on the university campus and had the sheet there ready for somebody to sign. And then for nobody to show up, boy, I was livid. I'm saying, you do all this talking and stuff outside of the ring, but when somebody wants to engage you, you won't even show up. I mean, man, I was fighting, man.
okay, how was that? If you could comment on YouTube if sound was too loud or if it was too soft, just let me know. Oh, let's see what's happening there. I got the wrong border there for some reason. Oh yeah, I got to go here. I keep forgetting that. So let's see if there's any comments on the YouTube channel. Let's see what's happening down below. Let's see, hopefully, are there any comments? Live chat, let's see, open the panel. Can we do that? Join the line chat. One's watching 4 minutes ago. Open the panel. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Over here is the top chat. Can we open chat? Oh, here we go. I think I'll be able to do that. Here, I'm going to chat on the side. Where are you from? And how warm is it? Okay. And what's the temp? Uh-oh. What's the temp? Yeah, that didn't work. Okay, yeah, in Minnesota here, it's probably like 10 degrees. So we have to enjoy it while we can. Okay, where are we at? We are at 6. Okay, we got time to show you another promo. We are going to move this from the studio, and we are going to add another promo for tonight. And this is going to be Dr. Matt Welborn. Here we go. So just giving you a sneak peek of this. I'm going to take myself
a undergraduate degree in systems engineering control systems, and then a master's in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering as well. I was a believer in evolution. I thought that science had all the answers and they had things figured out from a secular perspective. But after I became a Christian, I had to sort that out, and I realized that we really didn't understand how everything around us came to be. And in particular, in my field, we look at the flows of information, and we look at the source of information. We look at how does information move back and forth between different systems. And I began to understand that in living systems, it's the same thing. How is this whole world around us designed? And so I think Walt kind of pulled together a lot of different things in his theory. He addresses in his book and in his other work biology and genetics and all the geophysics and the cosmology, and ties it all in together with the Bible, which I think is an amazing thing to do. And it's fairly unique in theory. He did an amazing amount of work, and a lot of it has really amazing amounts of analysis and data to back it up. Many predictions that came true or have yet to come true, but still might. And he's just an amazing man. And I think God really worked through him to bring a lot of truth into people's lives.
Okay, welcome back. Yeah, we will be going live in about 2 minutes. So I'm going to remove this, and at 8 o'clock sharp, we will begin. And so until then, let's see.
A undergraduate degree in
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Hydroplate Week of Celebration, where we are here to honor Walt Brown and his amazing hydroplate theory. We want to get this into the mainstream, and our thoughts and prayers go out to Walt's family. He went home to be with Jesus on September 27th, and he was 88 years old. And so he did about as much as he could do with his life, as far as all the study and the family man and the military man and the teaching at the academy. Just an amazing, amazing man, and all the study and all the research that he did. We want to make sure that that doesn't fall by the wayside. What we want to do is help get the hydroplate theory into the next generation, because this is an amazing theory. Some people may not know what it's about. I was on there was a podcast. Ken Ham was on the Creation Today podcast, and I chatted some questions in there, like, what do you think of the accurate HPT predictions? And somebody commented and asked, well, is HPT a new form of AI like ChatGPT? And I said, no, it's the hydroplate theory, and it logically explains 25 major features on Earth and in the solar system, and it makes some astoundingly accurate predictions. And it's also being validated by NASA discoveries. And for more information, go into the Brian Nichol YouTube channel. So somebody learned about the hydroplate theory. And that's what we really want to do this week. We want to get this into the next generation, so all this information just doesn't fade into history. And and who's going to do it? Well, it's not going to be the secular scientists. They don't want this there. And it's not even going to be the creation scientists. They seem to want nothing to do with the hydroplate theory for whatever reason, and the creation organizations too. So this has to be a grassroots movement. So we need you, and we need everybody. Everybody, someone can't do everything, but everybody can do something. So I just encourage you to share these links. They're on the Hydroplate Week of Celebration YouTube channel. There's some promos there that you could share with your friends and invite them to come to this week of celebration and see what God does with those seeds that you plant. And remember, that's what happened to me. 21 years ago, my cousin Carol, she sent me a copy of this video called The Age of the Earth, and it changed my life. I'd never heard that fossils were a sign of a flood. I had never heard that evolution was based on lies, and it changed my life. And I encourage you to plant seeds out there. Just open the door to creation, and maybe somebody will kick it down, because there's a battle going around here, and there's a battle raging all around us. There's a battle between God's truth and Satan's lies, and the ground zero for that battle is creation versus evolution. And we've got a theory that makes accurate predictions, and we've got to get it into the mainstream. And another way you can impact the younger generation is do your Christmas shopping. Give them some hydroplate merchandise. And you can find that at hydroplate.org. There's a store, and also rsr.org. There's a store. And invest your money in God's kingdom instead of man's kingdom. And so that's what we like to do. And we also want to give people an opportunity to think. And, the government schools don't do that. They give people a blind chance perspective of the past. That's the Big Bang and evolution, and that's all that's allowed. And so it's like, thinking your computer came together by chance. That'd be absurd, right? Well, how much more absurd to think your bodies got together that way? And yet that's all that's allowed in the government schools. And so as Christians, we should have a higher standard than that. If there are multiple theories out there, that we should present them so people can think. There's the catastrophic plate tectonics, and there's also the hydroplate theory for the flood. And I suggest that the creation museums put them both in their museums and let people see the strengths and weaknesses of each theory. And then I'd also like to submit that, submit the hydroplate protocol. Before your theory is presented, you present all the accurate predictions you have and what your current predictions are. And if it's a biblical theory, put your biblical support that distinguishes that from other theories, because the hydroplate, it knocks the ball out of the park on all three of those areas. And you might be thinking, well, why isn't this being discussed more? Why isn't this in the creation museums? Well, you're going to have to tune in tomorrow night at 9:05 Eastern. Pastor Kevin Lea is going to explain the story behind the story. But until then, let's move on, get people up to speed with what the hydroplate theory is. And here's a quick overview that was taken with on the Liberty Sentinel report. So enjoy this.
Welcome Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, there have been some really interesting discoveries in recent months on asteroids that bring up some really significant questions about how the Earth got to looking like it does. Now, I'm sure most of you learned in your government indoctrination, public schools, and I learned when I was in school, not in government school, but still an indoctrination camp, that there was plate tectonics, whatever. And I had no reason to doubt that. But I was at a conference, a homeschool conference, just a few months ago. I gave the keynote talk there on some things, and I ran into a very interesting individual who said, no, plate tectonics is not really what happened. And he introduced me to this thing called the hydroplate theory. And it was so fascinating. I watched a few videos about it, and, I don't know enough to know whether it's correct or not, but I know enough to know that this ought to be heard. In fact, this, to me at least, makes just as much sense, if not more, as the plate tectonics theory, and it seems to be pretty in line with the evidence and with what the Bible teaches. Our guest today to discuss all this is Brian Lauer. He's a biblical creation researcher. He's given talks on creation and freedom talks from Minnesota to Florida at churches, schools, colleges, conferences. You can find some of those talks on the Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel, and then the ones that would otherwise be censored are over at Revival of Truth channel on Rumble. Brian, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And it's such a pleasure. And I appreciate the microphone to get all these different ideas out there. So great job. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you trying to sound the alarm about this. I think a lot of Christians just say, well, that's secondary, and I'm just worried about Jesus. And, I understand that thinking. But I do think also that we as Christians have an obligation to try to understand things from a scriptural point of view, from a scientific point of view. And I don't believe those two are in conflict with each other. I know you don't either. Brian, let's start with these discoveries that were made on the asteroids. You mentioned the serpentine that lend credence to this hydroplate theory. Talk about these discoveries and why that's relevant to this discussion.
Yeah, an asteroid Bennu, they found serpentine, and that basically, they imagined this watery planet that was going through space that exploded. And the serpentine, and they even show the map of the mid-oceanic ridge, which is a key component in the hydroplate, because that's where we say the water shot up from. And they said that it formed there, and they imagine a watery planet. And then there's a little clip. I was on Real Science Radio, and Doug Williams says, what you've just seen here is a victim of the government education system. They won't even consider that comet or that asteroid came from Earth. And there's been accurate predictions with the hydroplate theory. They predicted they'd find rounded boulders in comets and asteroids, and Comet 67P validated that. And then they also said that asteroids would be flying rock piles and loosely held together, and that's what they are. And NASA was wrong both times. Kevin Lea is an expert on this, and we're going to be giving a hydroplate seminar on Standing for Truth. So if anybody wants more detail, that's on YouTube, Standing for Truth. It's a theory that makes accurate predictions. NASA discoveries are validating it, and yet it's being kicked to the curb by evolutionists and creationists alike. And I'm trying to bring it into the mainstream so we can destroy the Big Bang once and for all.
Yeah, let's get into this, Brian. So the theory that we all learned was that over millions or billions, soon it'll be trillions of years, the continents slowly moved away from each other, and that's how the planet ended up looking like it does. My understanding, at least my very superficial understanding of this, is that the hydroplate theory holds that no, the Earth's crust is on water. And during this catastrophic great global flood that the Bible talks about, and that the scientific evidence, in my opinion, is just absolutely overwhelming, showing that this occurred, we had catastrophic movement and the pressure coming out. Walk us through the basics of this theory, and then people can go watch the videos if they want to get more in-depth.
Well, it's based on one assumption. That one assumption is half of the ocean was inside the Earth at one time. That's the only assumption. See, most theories, they try and figure out what caused something to happen, where this is setting up the cause with just the one assumption. And then if that was the case, and it's got biblical support, the fountains of the great deep broke up, and he laid the earth upon the waters. So there's biblical support for water being inside the earth at one time. Just think of the earth as a big apple. The skin is 60 miles thick, made of granite, and then there's a layer of water underneath that. And then you throw the moon in there, and that's going to stretch and compress the crust. See, right now, back then, the crust wasn't broken into plates like it is today. It was just the crust. And as it stretches and compresses every, twice a day with the tides and stuff, it's going to generate heat. That heat goes into the water. The water gets hotter and hotter and hotter. It wants to boil, but it can't, and then because there's no room to expand. And then at 705 degrees and 3200 psi, it becomes supercritical water, where it's not really water and it's not really steam, but whatever it is, it dissolves things like crazy. So now it's starting to dissolve the granite above, and it mixes together elements like limestone and salts and silicas and cementing agents. And then eventually, fast forward, the crust gets so weak that it splits in two directions at one time. That's what happened when the fountains of the Great Deep broke up. There's a crack in the crust. It goes in two directions all around the earth and then comes back together like a seam on the baseball. And then it rains for 40 days and 40 nights as the water gushes out of there. It's a fountain. And people say, well, if that would have happened, wouldn't it have left a mark on the earth? And that it did. That's the mid-oceanic ridge. In the middle of the ocean, it's the mid-oceanic ridge. That's a mountain range, 46,000 miles long. How does that form? By stretching in two directions. Okay, and so right now you got with the two cliffs 60 miles high, the water is shooting up with hypersonic speed, and it's eroding the granite above and on the side, and that's where we get a lot of our sediment for sedimentary rock. And then eventually these cliffs get wider and wider and wider, and there's nothing to push down on the mantle, so the mantle bulges. Okay, and when it bulges, the continents start sliding because the continents are on supercritical water, which is 50 times slicker than water. So it's just think of this big ice hockey or air hockey table. Now you can show the mountains one. The North America and South America are sliding, then Africa and Europe are sliding, then they buckle up when they meet resistance, and that's how we get the Rockies and the Andes, which are pretty much parallel to the mid-Atlantic ridge. Okay, and so now you got mountains, which are a big mass on a small base. They sink in, and then the plateaus, if something sinks in, something has to rise up, and that's the plateaus. That's another mystery for them. Okay, and then as that's how you get Grand Canyon. That's a whole nother talk, but you can see that on my YouTube channel. Okay, so the mountains sink in, the plateaus rise up, and similarly, as the mid-oceanic ridge rises up, something has to sink in, and that's the Pacific Ocean. So the Pacific Ocean sinks in, and that's why the trenches, that's why that ocean is so much different than all the other ones. It's got all this volcanic activity and table mounts and sea mounts and trenches. Mariana Trench is a mile deeper than Everest is high. Okay, so then the water which was covering the earth gushes off the earth to fill in the Pacific Ocean, and Walt Brown thinks that happened on the 150th day of the flood. That's the eruption. You had the eruption phase of the hydroplate, and then the continental drift phase of it, which he thinks was about 24 hours. And then he thinks the mountains rose up in about an hour. Okay, as they crushed like a car accident, just crushed up there. And then as it went up, it pushed the atmosphere, and then you had this big wind coming, like a tsunami of wind going across the earth. Okay, and so then the water gushes off, cuts these canyons, which the submarine canyons are cut then. But the continental shelves are still sticking out. So it cuts the canyons, the continents sink down, and then the oceans rise up and bury those submarine canyons. And then we have the Ice Age, and evolutionists can't explain that, but we can. It takes a little bit of time, but we'll just fast forward. They found a mammoth standing up that was frozen in permafrost up in the Arctic Circle. How do you freeze a mammoth standing up? This is in a Russian museum, the Berezhnikov mammoth. So what happened is some of this stuff was shooting up with such tremendous force, it got out of our atmosphere and got really cold in outer space. And then the gravity grabbed it and pulled it down, and so it buried them in muddy hail. How deep, I don't know. But that's how it froze the mammoths. And then fast forward a little bit, and some of this stuff was shooting up with such tremendous force that not only did it escape our atmosphere, it escaped our gravitational pull. So now you got this ice and dry ice and mud and stuff flying around. You got like dirty snowballs in the solar system. That'd be our comets. That's why our predictions about what they'd find in a comet were accurate, and their predictions were wrong. And then also the comets, the asteroids, and the trans-Neptune objects came from Earth. And that's what the orbits are showing. That's what they're finding inside the comets and asteroids are showing. And so this is a theory that's been very robust. And they say, well, if that happened, wouldn't it leave a mark on the moon? And it's like, yeah, the near side of the moon is pounded and the far side isn't. You have all these lava flows on the near side of the moon, and that's counterintuitive because the Earth protects the near side of the moon. So it's answering all these things, and even goes on to say how he thinks radioactivity formed during the flood, but that's a whole nother topic. I would just suggest people watch Brian Nickel videos on YouTube. And also we've got some also in Real Science Radio, rsr.org. When I listened to Walt Brown being interviewed, that colored in the details, and I've never seen the Earth the same. Or the solar system. So I'm just trying to get this into the discussion. Let's have people look at it. There should always be competing hypotheses so people can think. If they only have one that you're banging all the time, people just memorize. And that's what the evolutionists do with the plate tectonics. And that's what Christian organizations, the big ones, they only have the catastrophic plate tectonics, which is a secular model sped up. How does subduction begin? What's the mechanism? What's the force? These big plates move with those mountain roots so deep. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And then there's a book here called 20 Reasons to Question Plate Tectonics, which is really good. And also the guy who mapped the seafloor, Tectonic Globalone. This is from N. Christian Smoot. He was in the Navy. He was measuring he was mapping the ocean floor. And what he's saying, and a lot of it was top secret, he couldn't release it, but now he says, it doesn't work. Wow. And so I think that we should have multiple competing hypotheses. At those big museums, they should have plate tectonics, catastrophic plate tectonics, and the hydroplate. Show them all, let people think instead of just what they want people to think.
Yeah, no, and after watching some of those videos and looking at some of this evidence, I agree with you. This is something that at least needs to be considered. It's something that scientists need to look at and come up with some explanations for. Brian, this has really been a pleasure. The best way for people to watch these videos that you're talking about, that would be at the Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel, and then the ones that would be censored, those are at Revival of Truth on Rumble. Is there any other place people can go to get some of these?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest Real Science Radio, rsr.org. That's a radio program, comes out once a week. And also it's also on YouTube, and listen to the Walt Brown interviews. And you can go into rsr.org/HPT, and you can download this 600-page Hydroplate book, 600-page, go into rsr.org/HPT. You see this cover, and then there's a 9th edition button underneath it, and you can click it and download it for free. And that's a good site. And then also there's so much on that website alone, like the objections to the theory and the answers to the theory. And so it's just a great source. And then Mike Snavely, he's got missionimperative.org. He's got a really good video on the Grand Staircase, how all these features around Grand Canyon came from the same event, like Zion and Bryce and the petrified trees. So anyhow, there's a lot to go into. Again, but Brian Nickel is very good at it. And then rsr.org is very good. Those are two good sources. And then I've got a Hydroplate playlist just on my YouTube channel called Solidify Your Faith. Excellent. And if you go there, you can see Walt Brown explain it himself. And so, yeah, that's a really good source. And I do appreciate you letting us get this information out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brian. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And I hope we can get you back soon to discuss this in more depth.
Amen. Thank you. Praise the Lord. Amen.
All right, folks, that is all we have time for today on the Sentinel Report. But I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to encourage you to get involved. Don't just be hearers of the word. We got to be doers. So we need to get out there and do things, not to save ourselves. We cannot save ourselves, but because God has called on us to be doers. There's so much that needs to be done. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So let's get busy. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is the Sentinel Report. Until next time, God bless you all.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Hydroplate Week of Celebration. We are so blessed to have Dr. Major Coleman here. The first time I was exposed to him, he was on Hope at Night, and he destroyed evolution. Man, I can still remember how you offered, what, $20,000 to anybody who would debate you. And so welcome aboard, Major Coleman. We're so glad that you're here.
Good to be here.
Amen. So did anybody ever take you up on that $20,000 offer?
Unfortunately not. People are were always surprised. They said, well, man, that's a good thing. At least you got to keep your money. It wasn't about keeping money. It was about engaging.
Yeah.
And wow, since we've started there, we should really talk about it. Half of that money was mine and the other half was Walt's. So
Really?
yeah, so we put that together. I put up 10 grand and Walt put up 10 grand. And I had two cashier's check, mine and Walt's, there on Saturday morning at the State University of New York at New Paltz. And there had been a tremendous amount of discussion in the student newspaper in the weeks leading up to that. So, and as everyone knows, Walt had tried for 30 years and not been able to get a debater. So I was really hyped and hoping with double the money that we would really be able to get something going. And I had been wolfing and bragging for several weeks on the university campus and had the sheet there ready for somebody to sign. And then for nobody to show up, boy, I was livid.
Right.
I mean, I was really, really ticked. I'm saying, you do all this talking and stuff outside of the ring, but when somebody wants to engage you, you won't even show up. I mean, man, I was fighting, man. It was the weeks after that, at the university campus, people would stop me and ask me, they say, what happened to the 20 grand? And I'm saying, I went home with it in my pocket.
Really? What would have they had to do to get the 20 grand? They'd have to
All
step
they
up to.
had to all they had to do, Brian, was to sign. Well, now, okay, now wait a minute. Let's first of all, you had to qualify. That is, you have to have a PhD in a natural or physical science.
Okay.
So I had plenty of people, high school science teachers who wanted, just wanted some money. And I'm saying, look, no, that's not adequate. Really, to understand what was going on, we're really saying, look, I'm putting my name and my reputation on the line. Are
Yep.
you willing to do the same thing?
Exactly.
And that we had an evolutionary studies department on campus, and the State University of New York has a statewide evolutionary studies department. So I figured with that kind of depth, certainly we would find someone with the courage to come forward. I'm saying, am I that scary? I mean, is it that? I mean, really?
What is your educational background? As long as we're on that.
I am a lawyer by training. I have a JD. I have a PhD in political science and a doctor of juridical science in jurisprudence. That is the science of law. So my educational background is social science and law.
And the scientists were afraid of you. The scientists who knew the science didn't want to talk to you.
I said, look, and I tried to tell them, look, who am I?
Exactly.
Who am I?
Yeah.
Surely with all, geology, biology, chemistry, astrophysics, all of you together, surely you would be able to actually crush me, and I would be so devastated. Can you imagine how I would feel for that to happen in public? All of my students would say, boy, Major, really, they just mopped the floor with you. I mean, believe me, I would never come forward again.
Well, it's pretty telling that they don't step up to the microphone. That their silence speaks volumes.
Look, the evolutionary studies department, they didn't get to be in evolutionary studies by being stupid. They know, of course, I've been on campus for a long time. They know that I'm a fierce debater. That is, and all the science isn't going to help you once you get into the ring. That is, my job. My job is to destroy you and to laugh about it. That's my job is to. Yeah, that's my job. But I of course I didn't want to show that face because I really wanted to get someone to sign.
Praise the Lord for people like you, Major. Hold their feet to the fire. Put them in uncomfortable positions and let's see what they do.
I failed. That's all I can say. And
No, you didn't fail. You didn't fail. No, you showed that they're afraid to step up to the microphone. You showed that, and if somebody does want to step up to the microphone, Standing for Truth has a really good YouTube channel where they line up debates all the time. So if there's any evolutionists out there, it's good to see both sides. It really is.
The genius of Walt's challenge, and I really want to say it was my mentor, Dr. Walter Brown. the genius of Walt's challenge was that the basis of it was a written debate. So in a verbal debate, of course, you can lie, and most lay people will not know that. But in a written debate, of course, if you do that, that is, the literature is going to destroy you,
Right.
and everyone will be able to see it. And that was the great fear.
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, as scientists, they knew, as trained scientists, they knew that when it came down to the empirical evidence,
Right.
that they could not back that up on paper.
Exactly. And yet that's in the journals, but in the high school textbooks, it's all, cut and dried. We got it all figured out, and they don't. And you exposed them. So praise God for that.
I told them, I said, look, you better come with all the science that you've got, radiometric dating, carbon-14, bremsstrahlung radiation. I'm saying, because we're going to show up Saturday morning and we're going to be smoking. And that again, the weeks after that, people would stop me on campus and they'd ask what happened. And when I told them that I went home with the money in my pocket, they were always shocked at that. I mean, because they thought, how could all the, and I offered to give the money to the Department of Evolutionary Studies. How could they not take that if your argument was so strong? So we made a lot of headway.
Oh, yeah.
Our program on campus was very forceful. Here is for you to see is maybe I'll back it up.
Noah's Ark.
This is a 1 to 220 scale model of the Ark.
Yeah.
My model that I take on campus is 1 to 48. Now, this only weighs a few ounces, and so 1 to 48 is about 5 times larger. And you'd say, well, how big can that get? It gets 12 feet long and 300 pounds. That's how big it gets.
Wow.
Multiply it by boom, 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 5 times. Boy, believe me. And I made that model because at the first presentation that I attended with Walt, he had his HO model, scale model there, which is about 1 to 84. And I was so impressed with that. I had never seen how big the Ark was, and see it with trains and trucks. I said, good night, it was gigantic.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do my teacher one better. So I made it O scale, which is twice the size. And then I realized, you know what? Now I understand why Walt didn't do that. I'm saying that was a mistake.
And people can see that on that Hope at Night. You had that Ark there, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I hurt my back.
Oh, no.
For weeks after that, I was walking with a cane. It weighs 300 pounds. It's made out of white oak. It's not a small thing.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
And to load it, I had to load it myself. Once I got to Hope at Night, we had studio personnel that could help me get it out of the truck.
Yeah.
But to make it to scale, and I'm saying absolutely to scale in terms of the width and everything. And the eyewitness accounts that we have showed that the Ark was not, unlike the tourist attraction in Kentucky, the Ark was not made out of lumber. No boat like that could survive the flood. It was made out of hewn logs, so there was no frame on the inside. My guess is the logs it was tongue and groove construction, and they were slid together by heating tree sap mixed with cotton and then filled it with water so it would swell. So it was incredibly strong.
Wow.
So to make a 12-foot box out of white oak with an inch thick, you can imagine how it gets heavy pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
And so the students really loved it.
Oh, yeah. You had mentioned that you were that Walt Brown was your mentor. What are some of the experiences that come to your mind when you think of those days walking with today's Isaac Newton?
Walt shocked me. So I was a graduate student at the University of Chicago at the time, and Walt's program was advertised on the Moody Broadcasting Network. And so I went to see him. My son was in kindergarten at that time. So just to give you an idea how long ago that was, my son's a professor with a PhD in his own right.
Well, congratulations.
But he's in kindergarten. That's how long ago that was. And of course, Walt always remembered me and my son there. And I remember I was so shocked at the information and the evidence that Walt gave. I was, and Walt was always tough. Walt was I don't know that Walt had a light side to him. And what impressed me, so every question I would put to Walt had a scientific answer for it.
Sure.
Sometimes it was frustrating because Walt was such an excellent scientist.
Yeah.
And as I prepared my program, and I would ask Walt questions, particularly about alpha decay in radiometric dating.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that because my field is not in natural or physical sciences, that Walt would go easy on me. No way, no, Major. He says, hey, Major, no, he would just tell me flat out, no, Major, that's wrong. Read it again. And I say, hey, well, can't we cut to the chase? Why don't you just give me no, read it again.
Wow.
You're going to master alpha decay. And I want you to know why. And why does having too much helium and too much, whatever the mother and daughter element is, that is whatever it degrades to, if it's uranium lead, that is lead and helium or whatever, potassium argon, why can't you have both of those elements in large quantities, and why do they contradict each other? And he wants to make sure that I know my stuff backwards and forwards. So, I learned it really well. I'll tell you one thing about Walt that it scared me. And when I had my programs, Walt would tune in and watch.
Ooh, good.
And I told my students, you get nervous when I'm testing you. My teacher is watching me do his program. Imagine how I feel. I'm nervous too.
Yeah.
And Walt told me, he said, Major, that was an excellent program. And
great.
To hear that coming from a scientist at that time, the greatest living creation scientist in the world, tell me that my program was excellent, really pushed me forward. It really, really affirmed me. And that's what Walt was like.
Wow.
That's what he was like.
So was that the power station? Was that the power station program?
Yes. That was the power station program, which we've done on campus, which was an all-day program, 4.5 hours.
Whoa.
It was just like Walt's program, 4.5. Well, no, we didn't do 4.5 hours straight, right?
Yeah.
We broke it up into 3 90-minute sections and then 90 minutes of question and answer, just like Walt's programs. Walt's programs were all day.
Yeah.
And we provided lunch and breakfast and lunch for the students. And Brian, I don't want to. I can't take credit because I was simply copying.
My
mentor. That's all I was doing.
And that's that I'm not the scientist. I'm the megaphone. And I think we need more megaphones out there to tell people what the smart people are doing. Because if if nobody knows what they're doing, it doesn't help. So I think but you stepped up to the microphone. There's value in that. There's a lot of value in that. And then sharing stuff that opens the door to creation and the Hydroplate to other people. I think there's a lot of value in that. So thank you for studying and for being able to do all those, the power station. Now, is that the powerstation.org or power station?
That's right. That's powerstation.org. We will be, besides Hope Channel, I've been on Hope Channel twice and in the Bahamas. I'm in Miami right now, but next year I'm I'm originally from New York, and Miami is strange to me. I still can't, for a long time, I kept thinking, what are those palm trees doing here? And then someone told me, they said, Major, the palm trees belong here. You don't.
Well, you were in a free state, so there was something to that.
Yeah, Miami is strange, but next year we'll be doing our program again in Durham, North Carolina, where I recently left. So we'll be having a program, and we'll make sure that you know about it. And it will be, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be a tribute to Walt and to hydroplate theory, which is just fabulous. Walt did me a great service by telling me how he got started, and that was really good. That he he's driving across. He's at the Air Force Academy, and he's driving across
Kansas.
Yeah, where the Air Force? It's in Colorado, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's driving across Colorado, looking at the mountains, and he hears Alfred Lee's father, Alfred Lee Sr. Now, this is strange because Alfred Lee is an artist, a fabulous artist. And Alfred Lee drew some of the graphics in Walt's book.
Oh, really?
Alfred was my art teacher in college, okay?
Wow.
So I knew Alfred very well, but I did not know Alfred's father.
Yeah.
Alfred's father, Alfred Sr., was a pastor, and it was Alfred Sr. that Walt heard on the radio in Colorado talking about Noah's Ark. Man.
Sure.
And so I said, so when Walt was telling me that, I'm saying, well, I know Alfred very well. He's an artist. He said, well, his dad. So Walt knew both the father and the son. I didn't know because Walt was about 20 years older than that. So that was a generation before me.
Mm-hmm.
And so Walt, he stops the car. He gets on the telephone. I mean, this is before cell phones,
Oh, yeah.
And he calls the radio station.
Yep.
And he tells them, he says, look, I'm looking at the Rocky Mountains. There's no way to get water to cover the Rockies.
Yeah.
And so Walt starts studying.
Yeah.
And after he retires from the military as a full bird colonel, at 42, 43, I mean, that's an incredible accomplishment in itself.
Well, yeah.
Then he takes every course at the University of Arizona in Tucson. I think it's in Tucson. I think it is. I think the University of Arizona. Yes, it's in
With
Tucson.
Bob Dietz? He was
Not
taking
Arizona
classes
State.
with Bob Dietz. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah. Yes. It's Tucson. Getting my geography. Yeah, Arizona State is in Phoenix. That's right. University of Arizona is in Tucson. Okay, I've got it. Takes every Bob Dietz. He takes every evolutionary course there that they have to offer, and of course, studying, working nearby one of the co-founders of plate tectonics. You can understand why he got so good.
Oh, yeah.
Hydroplate theory.
Yeah.
And why he corrected the plate tectonics and did a fine job.
And that's one of the big critiques against Walt is he's not a geologist, but man, he studied at the feet of Bob Dietz, who coined the term seafloor spreading. And they met every Wednesday and discussed things. So that's, he had quite the education. He might not have had the degree, but he had the education.
Brian, that is not a critique of anyone because, and you have to, when you really think about it, so I'm a trained jurist, I'm a lawyer. What if I said to you, you cannot discuss the law because you're not a lawyer? You can't govern the country because you don't have a degree in political science.
Right.
That is, science is for everyone. That is, the job of the scientist is to teach people how to use science, not to tell them what to think. So it's a very elitist view.
Right.
That is, I'm a political scientist. I don't have to have a degree in natural science. Science is not just about natural or physical sciences. It can be about social sciences. It's the scientific method.
Right.
What is the scientific method? The use of observation, record keeping, controlled analysis of the empirical world, which is falsifiable by others. So we don't just have natural and physical sciences, we have social sciences, we have the science of law, and where we can apply these things. Anyone who is trained to use critical thinking can evaluate the most highly trained Nobel laureate scientist, and they should.
Exactly. We're just not doing a good job of teaching people how to critically think. We're doing a real good job of teaching them, what to think and how to memorize, and kids don't like that. But if we showed them how to think and give them a couple of different theories to critique, I think they would enjoy it a lot. I had the 8th edition of Walt's book, and just last year I gave it to a professor at St. Cloud State because they don't have a theory for Grand Canyon, and she knows that. And so, but I got an email 2 days later, and she said basically you can pick it up at the office. Walt's not a geologist, so she didn't want to even look at it, which is really holding science back. It really is. This consensus, this
No one
groupthink
who
is,
does not have both a law degree, a PhD in political science, and has passed the bar should be able to vote in this country because you're not qualified to understand government or law. What if I said that?
it's absurd. It's just absurd.
You should, Brian. I don't want you to see you at the polls voting, Brian.
Right, right,
I
right.
don't want to see you. You're not I mean, are you crazy?
Yeah, yeah. So your son was in kindergarten when you met Walt, and
My
then you
son,
stayed in touch with him, and you would,
Walt would come through Chicago every year, and
yeah,
I would go and take my son to the programs every year. So I mean, and I was in Chicago for 8 years, and he would see my son getting bigger and bigger.
yeah,
And then after I graduated and started teaching, sure, I would stay in touch with Walt as he went through the various editions
yeah,
of the book, and and of course they got bigger, more extensive, and of course I always had questions, and Walt would write to me personally. I still have his letters.
oh, praise God.
We would talk on the phone. One of the biggest issues I had after the fifth edition was Walt. We talked a lot about the Atlantic. What was going on in the Pacific?
Yeah,
As Walt began to address those things, I was simply astounded at how he used science and addressed every single issue. Why is the Pacific called the Ring of Fire? Why is it twice the size of the Atlantic? Why is it twice as deep? Where do volcanoes come from? Where do comets and asteroids come from? Just an incredible. I have to, Brian, I know we don't have time to go on because we're talking about decades and we're trying to fit it into a few minutes. But Walt was one of the first to really address the issue of origins generally, creation versus, excuse me, evolutionism.
yeah. There you go. There you go.
Stick it to creation science versus evolutionism. But he was one of the first to really address forcefully the racial issue there. And that when you're really talking about evolutionism, you're really talking about a racist point of view.
You are, yes.
I pushed it further than that because Walt was talking about the science, and I'm a trained social scientist. And when we look at the stats, many people don't know this, but it'll be coming out in my articles probably this year. Evolution is a theory of origins primarily held by whites.
Oh, really?
Primarily held by whites.
Sure.
And its strength is whites in the academy. I mean, in college. That's
Sure.
where now. Generally, whites are split about a third, a third, a third. That is, a third solid creation, a third theistic evolution, and a third hardcore evolution. Blacks are the only racial group in the United States that the majority are solid creationists.
Really?
Now, they don't know the science, but blacks are the only racial group which accept the biblical story of creation as valid. And of course, it's not hard to understand the reason for this, the strength of the Black church in the Black community. Black spirituality is through the roof. Now, I'm not saying that Blacks understand the science behind it. In fact, they don't understand it at all.
Sure.
But so when we're defending and supporting evolution in the courts, you're also making a racial statement.
Yeah.
And that's what's extremely dangerous. You're saying, look, we're going to support the origin theory of whites and not those of blacks. And I'm going to make that well known as we move forward. We really have to. That is, this is not about one racial group and what they're taught.
Right.
And that evolution is basically, and it started off, that is Charles Darwin, Alfred Russel Wallace, and Herbert
Yeah.
Spencer, all Englishmen who were living in the primary slave trader, England. They were the primary slave transporter, excuse me, and they grew rich off of slavery. And all of them had anti-black views.
Oh,
Well,
no doubt. No doubt. Oh yeah. I mean, that's what
I would say,
that's what the elite was teaching 100 years ago, and this evolution mindset where, you're not fit to reproduce. They sterilized what, 60,000 people. And yeah, it's a black stain. But that was the scientific elite that was talking about it. So we have to be very careful about listening to the scientific elite.
Walt was one of the first and bravest, very courageous, to point these things out. So I learned those things from from Walt. Some of the funniest stories. So Walt was doing his presentations, and Walt would pass out a survey about his presentation.
Yeah.
And I would always say, the presentations are very excellent. But Walt was never satisfied with that. He would say, "No, that's not what I want." And I'm saying, "Well, what do you want, Walt?" He said, "If there's something wrong with the presentation, I want to know what's wrong with it." And I'm saying, "Okay, well, now you're saying to me, Major, I want you to be picky." And
Good.
He said, "That's exactly what I want. That's exactly what I want."
Yeah, most people don't want to hear what they do wrong. They want to hear what they do right. Yeah, I think that shows Walt's humility. He wanted
Yes,
to
and that's
improve
what it was
over and
like.
over.
So I said, "Okay, Walt, okay. Picky you want, picky you get." I'm saying these are the only two things. If I had to pick something, the only two things that I could say that was wrong with this presentation. I said, some of the photos in the presentation, there were cars there that looked like they came from the 60s. And I said, the last half of the video, he was showing a video, the last half, I didn't say the whole video, the last half, there were no black people in it.
Ooh.
And he said, "Now, fine, Major." So the next year, all of those things were gone. I'm saying, "Well, what do you want?" I mean,
Yeah.
that's how intense he was, that he would not accept second best, slipshod. It was always, "Come at me with everything that you've got." And that's what made him such a fabulous scientist. Never shied away from anything.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of people criticize Walt. I haven't seen very many who were willing to get in the ring with him.
Right. And he welcomed it. If he had something wrong, he would correct it. He
Yes.
welcomed the correction. And so, yeah, just an incredible book, an incredible work that he's done. Hopefully the ninth edition will be available for Christmas. This is a proofreading copy of 600 pages, but yeah, it's real close to be on the press. Hopefully people will be able to get them on Amazon if they don't have the hardcovers ready. But yeah, that is incredible testimony. So when Walt would speak in Chicago, how big were the crowds?
So we were at Moody Church, which
Yeah.
is a little bit less than 4,000, I think.
Yeah.
And the downstairs of the church was always filled.
Wow.
Okay. So it was always several thousand people. Walt taught me a lot about how and what would go in, he would get really personal with me and tell me, how he set up his programs, even financially, that Walt did not take donations, that Walt, and this is how so I'm following the Walt Brown model, that Walt rented the church. He paid for it. Then he would ask the church leaders if they wanted a debate. They were responsible for finding an evolutionary scientist who was willing to debate. Walt paid the standard honorarium to that scientist.
Really?
And then they were ticketed events. And that's the model that I followed. Walt drove around the country for 20 years with a pickup truck and a 15-foot trailer.
Wow.
With his 6-foot model of Noah's Ark in the back. And this was before PowerPoint.
Right.
So that was a lot of work. Um, yeah. So Moody Church, it was always filled. Most of the time, it was in Moody Church or a large church in the Chicago area.
And he was able to pack it, and so people are interested in this. I mean, to get the crowd there, he must have had a pretty good promotion, or people just,
Yeah,
they
well,
just
it was,
wanted to.
of course, the Moody Broadcasting Network. So it was always and in
Oh,
the whole Chicago area. So that was another part of Walt's model. That is, he's renting a large church
yep,
in a large city
yep,
with radio programs, so the word can get out.
right,
So and advertising months in advance.
yep.
So and then of course Walt was so fabulous. Okay,
Well,
in
yeah,
front
yeah,
that and knew how to work a crowd and with the science that if he did it once, the next time he came through, it would just be packed. And so that's the way it always was coming through Chicago. You had to be careful though, because if you could learn enough just to get yourself in trouble.
sure,
So I'm a
sure,
student at the graduate student at the University of Chicago, and Stephen Jay Gould
yeah,
came to visit the University of Chicago, right?
oh yeah,
And I'm a Walt Brown student, and so I don't back up from anybody, not even
yeah,
Stephen Jay Gould.
yeah,
So I go to the lecture and I challenged Gould, and I'm saying, "Have you read Dr. Walter Brown and hydroplate theory?" I was, Gould was. I realized why Gould was popular. He was funny.
sure,
He made fun of some of the false ideas of evolutionary theory, and he attacked racism and evolution. He was liberal politically,
and he came up
and
with
so
punctuated equilibrium, right?
yes, yes. So even though most evolutionists don't accept punctuated
Yeah,
equilibrium, because they're saying what we need is lots of time. So it was kind of strange. But so watching Gould in front of a crowd, I could understand why he was popular. He was able to weave in popular culture into his lectures.
sure,
However, nevertheless, he's still an evolutionist,
yeah,
so hardcore. And so I challenged him with hydroplate theory, and I was surprised that it unnerved him. He was pretty, very steady and easygoing. That it really unnerved him, and he responded to me. He said, "No, I haven't read it, and I don't see why I should read it." You know,
wow, hit a
he was
nerve,
really offended. He was offended by it.
wow,
And for Stephen Jay Gould, I said that someone of his stature in the evolutionary community should be so rattled. You know, people need to pay attention to that.
oh yeah, yep, yep, you hit a nerve. Yeah, it's time to keep poking that nerve. That you've hit a thing. We are getting close to the end of the interview. And people can find you at the power station.
Powerstation.org, and then they can send me an email at major@powerstation.org. We will be posting probably near the end of the year. We'll be posting our presentation that's going to be in Durham, North Carolina, probably in June, and they'll be able to go to Durham, or they'll be able to watch it online. And I want to wish you and everybody at the Center for Scientific Creation good luck as you publish the 9th edition.
Right. Yeah, and that thing in Durham, maybe that'd be nice to have a hydroplate conference there. If you're there, maybe some other people. I don't know what the logistics would be, but yeah, let's get to Durham, North Carolina, and to check you out. And yeah, that's so blessing, such a blessing. Do you give churches or do you give talks at churches or anything like
Yes,
that?
yes, I do. If you go online, if you look at me online, you can see the programs that I did in the Bahamas and at Hope Channel. We don't always get to record all the programs that are at churches. All the churches, they're not always equipped to
Right.
record these things, but the larger programs are. Brian, I
that'd be
want to say in
fascinating.
closing that at this point, in terms of the science, we have no other theory other than hydroplate theory.
I
When
know.
we're talking about the geology of the earth, we have no
Right.
other viable theory. That's it.
Right. And we just need to get it into the mainstream. Hopefully we get it into some creation museums and creation organizations start talking about it more. There is a museum in Nebraska called Broken Bow, Nebraska, that has it. It's called the Boneyards. So we'll see who's going to be second. But yeah, what a blessing. You're right. This is the best time to be alive because there's so much evidence against the Big Bang and evolution like never before. And this information is more easily accessible than ever before with the internet. And now you've got people like you making it understandable like never before. So all we need is just a few more people in the battle and just get this snowball rolling. So thank you
Amen.
again so much, Major Coleman. And
Thank you, Brian.
yeah, I just pray that God opens more doors for you to reach more people because you've got a valuable message that has eternal consequences, and just may God bless your efforts.
Thank you so much, and be good, and we'll be in touch, Brian.
Absolutely. Praise the Lord. All right. Well, wasn't that fun? Yeah, I really enjoyed that interview. And that interview is available right now on the YouTube channel. And for some reason, it's not showing up under the playlist. But if you click the playlist, let me just share my screen with you for just a second. Yeah, we got a little bit of time. Let's see. We're going to share screen. And let's see, share screen, the whole screen. And there we go. And we'll just show you how you can get that. Let's see, we're going to let that into the, oh, here we go. We're going to allow it in. And we are going to go into the Hydroplate channel. So as you notice, we're live here, and this is the week of celebration. It should show up here, but it doesn't. So if you click the play all thing, then you're going to see down here, you're going to see these two interviews have already been posted. So if you want to share them with anybody, feel free. You know, that's what we're trying to do. And this is not, we're not building a kingdom. We just want you to be informed. And we're going to take a little look, a sneak preview about what's happening tomorrow. Let's see here. We're going to do right here. This is a promo for tomorrow, which you can look for. Let's see, I'll take that.
A shout out to Randy Galuso, the current CEO
Amen.
of
Yes.
Institute for Creation Research, because he invited me to present comets and asteroids from the hydroplate theory perspective at their headquarters in Dallas.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
an ICR, and he paid for all of his employees,
Yeah.
all the scientists there on staff to
Yep.
sit in the room. And he started out by saying, you know, we're here today to correct an injustice. That's
Yep.
what he said.
Oh, he did. Praise
He
the
said,
Lord.
we're gonna, you know, this is to fix an injustice.
Yep.
Dr. Brown's theory has been completely censored. I'm not quoting, you know, might not
Oh,
be
yeah.
quoting exactly here. But he's been censored, and we talk around here about, well, you know, hydroplate theory people say this, and hydroplate
Right.
theory people
Yep.
say that. And we're going to fix that we're going to let them talk.
Amen.
We're going to listen.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Hydroplate Week of Celebration. We are so excited to be able to honor Walt Brown and to also hopefully have the book ready for Christmas. Those would be excellent gifts. And we are honored to have Dr. Matthew Welborn here tonight. And he spoke at the 2023 conference. So we are so excited to have more and more PhDs stepping up to the plate for the Hydroplate. So welcome aboard, Matt. We're glad to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Now, where did you get to your PhD? Where was that?
So I actually graduated from Colorado, or from the United States Naval Academy. So I served as a naval officer in the U.S. Navy. I was a nuclear submarine officer. And after that, I decided to go back to school. So I did 6 years in active duty in the submarine service. And I went back and got a master's in electrical engineering. And then I got a PhD in electrical engineering as well at MIT.
At
So it was
MIT.
yes, sir. So it's a great opportunity to go and study and spend a number of years in really focused work, learning a pretty complex field.
Well, and that's not just a diploma mill there. You got to know your stuff to go in there, and a nuclear naval officer. So, why, sharp as they come. And so somebody, it's quite a blessing to have somebody with your intellect that's looking at the hydroplate theory. What draws you to the hydroplate? Why would you want to give talks at that conference?
Well, it's interesting. My background is a little bit similar to Walt's. So Walt also was a military officer. I believe he was a graduate of West Point, wasn't he?
Yes, West Point.
And so he was an Army officer. Now, he served an entire career in the military, but he did go on to get a PhD as well.
Right. And he went to MIT also.
He was going to go to, okay.
Yeah, he
Yep,
was going to.
he's got a couple years
Caltech
on
or
me.
MIT, and he picked MIT because that was the best. And when he tested in, he was in the 99th percentile. So
Wow.
yeah, so we got some sharp people that see the logic in this hydroplate theory. Engineers tend to love it. What was your degrees in?
I have a undergraduate degree in systems engineering, control systems, and then a master's in electrical engineering and a PhD in computer science and electrical engineering as well.
Wow. So you know how to study and you know how to you know how to think, that's for sure.
Well, it's a pretty broad area, but a lot of my work has been in signal processing, in RF systems, so radio systems, communication systems, wireless. So I've worked in a number of different fields, but I like to think of us as people that look for the patterns in the noise. That's what I spent a lot of my career doing, try to figure out what is buried out there in all the data as we sift through it and understand what's inside of it.
And with Walt Brown's, it's such an all-encompassing theory with all that data and all these mysteries that he's able to tie it together in one theory. What a blessing is that? What was if you had to pick one thing that says, I think the hydroplate is accurate because of, what would you say? What do you think goes to the top?
Oh, gosh, just picking one thing. Well, I became a Christian in my 20s. And up to that point, I would say I was a believer in evolution. I thought that science had all the answers and they had things figured out from a secular perspective. But after I became a Christian, I had to sort that out. And I realized that we really didn't understand how everything around us came to be. And in particular, in my field, we look at the flows of information, and we look at the source of information. We look at how does information move back and forth between different systems. And I began to understand that in living systems, it's the same thing. And there's a lot of scientists who are looking at the origin of information, the flow of information, and as well as not just in biological systems, but how is this whole world around us designed? And so I think Walt kind of pulled together a lot of different things in his theory. It's a very comprehensive theory, I think, is one of the main things that I like. He addresses in his book and in his other work, biology and genetics and all the geophysics and the cosmology, and ties it all in together with the Bible, which I think is an amazing thing to do. And it's fairly unique in theories. I mean, we don't know exactly what the ultimate truth is, but he did an amazing amount of work, and a lot of it has really amazing amounts of analysis and data to back it up. Many predictions that came true or have yet to come true, but still might. And he's just an amazing man, and I think God really worked through him to bring a lot of truth into people's lives.
Yeah, and what a blessing we have to be alive when he was alive, and he just went home he went to heaven last week, and what a loss that is. But he left something for us to carry on, and I'm just going through that book, everything like you said, it's just so all encompassing. I remember listening to Walt Brown Week on Real Science Radio, that's rsr.org, and listened to him explain evolution, the origin of Grand Canyon, and Kevin Lea talked about comets, and it was just an incredible show, a week of shows. And I've never seen the world the same again, or even the solar system the same. And what a tremendous blessing. So they probably didn't teach you that at MIT. How did you find out about hydroplate?
Well, as I said, after I became a Christian, I spent many years, decades, kind of working back and peeling back the layers of what I had learned in school and what I thought I understood about the world, about life and about the universe, and began to peel back the layers. And it's clear that the Bible was presenting a story about creations and origins that was very different than what most secular people believe. And so I think I came to see, I think the main thing was at first, when I understood that evolution just could not possibly account for the complexity of life as we see it around us, that as the more we learn about living systems, about not just humans, but even the simplest forms of life are so complex, the more we learn, I began from my scientific training to understand that that level of complexity cannot happen by accident. You cannot have randomness create structure and patterns and order and complexity. And really, that was one of the linchpins in the whole secular worldview, that if you take away evolution and say evolution can't happen, then you began to understand that the whole reasons for the belief in long ages of time and millions and billions of years, a lot of that was created in order to allow room for some kind of naturalistic origin story to begin to take place, both of living systems on the Earth itself, our solar system, the universe that we see out around us, all those things. If you want to account for them from a naturalistic perspective without an ultimate creator, then you have to wave your hands a lot, but you also need a lot of time. That's what people fall back on, is there's lots and lots of time, and we see things happening in the world around us, and whatever's here came about through slow, gradual processes over, incomprehensible periods of time. But like I said, the linchpin was once I realized evolution could not possibly be true, then I peeled back the layers and said, well, that means that the universe and life and our planet and our home here could all have been created in a very short period of time, just like the Bible teaches. And I began to see how all those things come together and reinforce each other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I know I talk to college students and they say, with all this time and all these planets, it's just going to happen, And so I'll ask them, well, do you think that your dryer, when you go get your clothes out, do you think you're going to go there sometime and it's going to be all folded up and the socks are going to be paired together? It's just going to happen, they're infinite probability. But there's people that have gone down that same path and they've come to the catastrophic plate tectonics flood model. But you've come across, you're supporting the hydroplate flood model, and it's kind of difficult when I speak and I ask who's heard of the hydroplate. It's very rare, it's maybe 10% of the people. So how did God bring that theory across your path so you could notice that?
Well, I originally began to read about some of the advocates of a biblical creation through many books that were written maybe in the last 50 years or so. So scientific creationism was fairly new. There were a number of different theories that people had, the gap theory, the canopy theory, things like that, where they were trying to fit what they saw with things that the Bible said. But I think one of the things that I began to, I think I had understood that something like that must be true. And certainly I think we could also say that God could create everything just the way that we see it. But because he's all powerful and
Oh, yeah.
all knowing. But I think that when I came across Walt Brown's book, and I actually can't remember the first time that I found it. I think I had reading through creation science literature and got a copy of his book. I ordered it. I was very excited, and it came in the mail. And it's an amazing book. Like I said, it's very comprehensive. And he laid out at the beginning all of the issues that he saw with scientific theories about the origin of life, about the origin of our planet and our solar system and the universe. And then he went through step by step and created related his model that was quite different than the canopy theory, right? Canopy theory said there was the origin of rain for the flood and water for the flood was some reservoir of water high up in the air, but I think it's been rejected, right? People began to understand that. But I think Walt Brown had this vision, this revelation to him, and I think it was divinely inspired, that the water was just what the Bible said. The Bible talks about the fountains of the deep, and that's one of the big differentiators with hydroplate theory, is that the source of water that the Bible talked about was vast amounts of water underneath the surface of the earth. And as you go and take a look at that theory that he created, and he iterated on it for many years, but he began it, you could see that it really lined up with what the Bible was kind of teaching at a very high level, that this was all there. The earth was the origin of all of these things, the water that God used in the flood. And Walt Brown kind of laid it all out in a way that showed there were huge amounts, vast catastrophic processes that occurred that really we had no experience with. And I think that's one of the hard things for people to understand, is just how large and how catastrophic these events were, that vast continents of land and rock could shift around very rapidly, that the total amount of water that's in the oceans, or a significant part of it, rushed out of subterranean caverns and flooded the surface of the earth. I mean, it all makes sense that everything kind of comes together nicely, but it explains so many things that I think science still cannot explain.
Oh, yeah.
One example that in his book he talks about, and this was a surprise to me, nobody had ever pointed out to me all the things that we don't understand about our solar system, about asteroids and comets and the moon, and the reason that we see all kinds of debris and trans-Neptunian objects and debris out in the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And he actually made an amazing case that a lot of that material started out on the Earth. And the rupture of the Great Deep was so catastrophic that it ejected a huge amount of water and rock and debris and even organic chemicals out into space. Up above our atmosphere, some of it fell back as torrential rain, but a lot of it actually was launched into space because it was such a huge, huge event. And it's amazing how he was able to show that explained many of the unknown things, the inexplicable things that we have that scientists just can't account for the origin of in our solar system and here on Earth as well.
Yeah, I know that there's articles on trans-Neptune objects, and they're puzzled because they're orbiting, some things are orbiting the wrong way, and they can't explain that with their Big Bang theory. And I think that this hydroplate theory will destroy the Big Bang once it gets into the mainstream, because it makes accurate predictions. It explains 25 major features on Earth and in the solar system, plus NASA discoveries are validating it. And Walt's son, Rob, he teaches at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and he wrote a paper that got published in a secular journal that explains how the trans-Neptune objects got out there, and basically said they came from the inner solar system, in the recent past, relatively recent past. So he has to choose his words carefully, but I think that's a euphemism. 6,000 years ago,
Sure.
and it's really a shame that people have to be careful about what they say. And I think he's tenured now, so he's fine. But other places you could lose your job. Jerry Bergman, he's written 3 volumes of books on this, where people, they could lose the job if they kick the sacred cow of Big Bang and evolution. Is that much of an issue where in your line of work, or is that not a big deal?
So I am a practicing engineer still. So I work on research efforts that are about using the principles of physics and magnetism and mathematics and everything and information theory to design systems for our customers. So it tends to be fairly focused. We are not really out there investigating, natural parts of the world or things like that. That's what I do in my spare time as a hobby, right? Is to read up and understand more about how our universe behaves and how it operates, and also, listen and think about how God could have created it. So it doesn't really impact my work. I've published many papers, but they don't really touch on, it doesn't come to be that you have to endorse one origin story over another in order to publish in these technical fields.
Right, because in your field it has to work. It's applied science.
That's
It
right.
needs to work, and it's not.
That's
and
right.
that's what science should be. What's observable and testable. And it bothers me that they're teaching a blind chance perspective in our government schools, and not only that, they're using errors. There's false information to get the kids to believe that. And so it's and like Walt Brown, he said that every student should do an origins project. They look at the evidence and then they look and try and figure out what's the best explanation for the fossils and the layers of rock and the DNA and the solar system. And then they come to their own conclusion, and whatever they decide isn't what matters. It's, can they articulate it? Can they argue the point logically? And that would teach them how to think critically. And that's what we need. We need more thinkers. And I like what Walt Brown, I'm trying to get the Hydroplate protocol going. Before you present your theory, present your predictions and your accurate predictions and biblical scripture. Before you say anything, we want to know, how accurate are you? What biblical support do you have? And what accurate predictions are there? So we're trying to blaze the trail there. And hopefully there's going to be some museums that allow the hydroplate theory in there. I think that's one of the big theories, that the big dominoes that has to fall. And so we've got it seems to be like the accurate theory. How do you have any ideas on how we can get this into the mainstream and have it impact the culture better?
Well, I think that certainly the way that people learn about new ideas has changed in the past years and past decade or so. There's a tremendous amount of time that people spend reading and listening to material online, YouTube channels, online conferences, Zoom meetings, and blogs and shows like this where we can talk just casually across many miles and exchange ideas. And that's opened up an amazing amount of exchange of information. So Walt started out in a time when he worked essentially alone by himself, and he traveled and he saw things, but he wrote, his entire book, many, half a dozen editions. But now it's really kind of caught fire. And I think a lot of people are open to looking at video presentations and hearing discussions and listening into talks and other people's testimony about what they've learned and reinforcing all the things that fit together with, some of the theories like hydroplate theory in particular, how it answers a lot of questions. And so I think that's what's going to happen, is that you just have more and more people become exposed to it. And I think that's what's going to happen. At the beginning of his work, Walt laid out a lot of problems. I think he's got over 100 issues with evolution, and with secular explanations for the origin of the earth and the universe. And he points out dozens and dozens of these things that cannot be explained. And I think even within his book, one of the things I appreciate about his book is in each area that he talks about, he puts side by side, sometimes 2, 3, sometimes 10 different hypotheses or explanations for a particular phenomenon, like buried mammoths or origin of the planets, or why did we have an ice age? On every one of these topics, he's got a table that he fills out, and he puts, a half a dozen or more different theories. And he asks specific points of evidence that the theory either supports or
Yep.
doesn't fit with. And he uses stoplights, red or yellow or green.
Yep.
And there's some theories that have a bunch of red lights,
Yep.
and yet people are not even aware
Yep.
that it can't explain some of the evidence that we know about. So I think part of it is just people are a little bit ignorant that the standard explanations, the secular explanations, have so many issues that can't be explained.
Oh yeah.
Evolution, the origin of life, the origin of our solar system. I mean, you've mentioned the Big Bang a number of times. The Big Bang really is not even well defined. There are many secular scientists who have rejected the Big Bang because they don't believe that it can explain what we're seeing. And I think now with the James Webb space, telescope that's been deployed, that we're finding many, many things that don't fit with what scientists had expected to see before it was launched about the things that they see in distant parts of the universe. As they look out into the universe, it doesn't fit what their ideas were.
Oh yeah.
And so we're having to go back and rethink a lot of the things that they thought were true.
Yeah, and it's such a laughing stock. Jason Lyle, he said, you know what, your James Webb predictions are going to be wrong. And once you realize they're wrong, then I predict you're going to say galaxies formed much sooner than expected. And he was right both times. And there's a cosmologystatement.org. It's an open letter to the scientific community that shows all the holes in the Big Bang theory. But then it goes on and says, but all the funding goes for Big Bangers. So you just get this self-perpetuating theory because that's where all the funding goes. And then the other thing and we were talking about this, the descentfromdarwin.org. There's over 1,200 PhD scientists who doubt Darwinian evolution. And I think kids should be taught that fact when they're learning about evolution. And then, some people, I gave the 9th edition. This is the prototype. It's a proofreading copy. And I gave that to, last year, I gave it to a professor at St. Cloud State, and she emailed me 2 days later, and she said, just pick it up at the office. I don't want to know it because Walt's not a geologist. And it's like, but Walt took geology classes from Dr. Bob Dietz. He's one of the key plate tectonic guys out there. He's the guy who coined the term seafloor spreading. And not only did he take classes with him, he met with them every Wednesday for a couple hours and they discussed things. And one time, Walt asked him where all the limestone came from, because limestone releases carbon dioxide. And it's like, and then Bob Dietz says, beats the blank out of me. So there's
an amazing number of issues like that Walt covers in his book that I had no idea. And I'm not a professional geologist either. And I think, and Walt's not claiming to be. Right. But what he does do is he has read the literature. He has talked to experts, as you said. He spent a large amount of time with experts, but he also was widely trained in many different fields.
Yes.
And he's asking questions. He is a layman, but I don't think it's true that geologists are the only people that can talk about geology, for example.
Well, exactly. Right? Sometimes the breakthroughs come from people who are outside of the groupthink. I think John Wooden said, when everybody thinks the same, nobody thinks. Sometimes you need an outsider, like Ignaz Semmelweis. He figured out you should wash your hands after doing autopsies, and what a radical idea that was. But he was ridiculed because it was outside the consensus. And so
I think many people that are scientists are so specialized in their fields today. If they're a evolutionary biologist or if they're a geologist, they don't really understand the relationships and what the issues are in the other fields and how they're related and how they call into question things. If the Earth's not really old, then an evolutionist should reevaluate that, or a geologist should take a look at that and reevaluate the things that they're seeing in a different way. And I think many of them do. But I think we're so specialized that it's very difficult for a person to understand such a wide range of different fields and how there are issues that are in many of them that draw into question all of this whole comprehensive explanations about where we came from and how the universe originated.
Right. And I think that was Walt's superpower, if you will. He was so knowledgeable on so many different areas, from, radioactivity to chemistry to astronomy, just so well read and so sharp too. I mean, a lot of that stuff just goes way over my head, but he's able to condense it into an understandable form. But then he's got all the sources for it too, all these amazing, all these scientific journals that he's sourced. And so it's such a blessing that he's done all that work. And that's one of the things that motivates me. I want to make sure that this hydroplate theory gets into the next generation, because I think Walt Brown was today's Isaac Newton. He just understood so many things, and I would hate to see that fade into history. And so we're doing whatever we can. And hopefully this week of celebration, where the book's available, where people can get it for online and for Christmas. But yeah, we're getting close to almost out of time. I do appreciate all that making time in your busy schedule. Are there any closing comments you'd like to say before we take off?
Like I said, I appreciate your work in celebrating Walt. I think part of it is to acknowledge, all the work that he did. And as you said, even though Walt passed away recently, I'm excited to see that there's a whole community of people that I've gotten to know over the last several years that you've connected with. And we've been at some of these events together, and I think celebrating Walt and his life and all of his work. And I think it's fantastic that this new edition is going to come out, because if somebody has read one of the earlier editions, the 9th edition is just amazing. I've read the PDF. I think the PDF itself is twice the size of the 8th edition book, which is one of the ones that I had. So there's a huge amount of additional information. And I was a nuclear engineer, so I appreciate all the new material on radioactivity.
Oh, yeah.
These are amazing evidences that nobody else can even account for. Nobody else has even thought about them. And it's amazing to see. So I just encourage people to take a look, plan on spending, you could spend the rest of your life understanding how God created this universe and this earth around us. And it's just amazing to see. So glory to God for what he's done, for how he has opened people's eyes to see that. And I think it also shows us that we were not just the earth and the universe and this planet and human life, but each one of us was created in an amazing way, that we're not here by accident. And I think that when people come to realize they have a creator and each one of us was made in an amazing way, I think people will see their place in the universe and their relationship with God in a whole different light. So I'm thankful that this whole study of creation science has changed so many people's lives and opened their eyes to what the reality of this world is and where they fit into it. So I think God will use it in mighty ways. So I appreciate your work and others that are working in this area as well.
And that's really the motivation for all of this. There's going to be an eternity, and the people are either going to be with God or without, they're in heaven or hell. And a lot of people are believing the Big Bang and evolution is fact, and they reject the Bible. And if they reject Jesus Christ, they'll end up in hell. And this is a good way to help people see that, the Bible and science go hand in hand. There's no opposition. And you had mentioned the 9th edition. If people are interested in getting that PDF, you can go into rsr.org/HPT. That's rsr.org/HPT. And then you see this book, and underneath the book, it'll say 9th edition, and you can click on that. And then you can download it. And I think everybody should download it, because who knows, you'd hate to have it on the internet and you can't get the internet for whatever reason. And then it's really neat online, because you can search a term like predictions, and you can go through and then you can see all the predictions he's made or whatever you're interested in. But it is nice having a book too, because you can go outside and just go Walt Brown surfing from one footnote to the next footnote. It is an incredibly fun journey to be part of. And I do thank you for being one of the leaders in this endeavor, because I think you're early to the party. It's going to be interesting to see who's next. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
What a blessing that is. And and you're part of the Triangle Association for the Science of Creation or something.
Science of creation, right? We call it TASK. So there is a local creation science group where we get together. We actually publish a newsletter. So there are original papers that are written regularly, and we publish that newsletter. And we have monthly meetings where we get together and discuss some of these topics. We present people's work and people's papers. We also review some of what's going on in the world around us, the literature and videos and other material that people have done. So it's been a great way to fellowship with other people that have similar interests and try to make an impact on the community around us. So it's been a great ministry as well.
And a good resource for technical expertise. I mean, there's a lot of scientists on that club. And yeah, that's what I think that needs to happen. That's another domino. There should be regional creation clubs that have speakers that come in or Zoomed every month or two. And then I think there should be a creation club in every community where you can get together and show movies and bring people to the regional community speakers and just get this snowball going, because it is a lot of fun. But again, thank you so much for what you're
Certainly.
doing, and
Sure.
may God bless your efforts.
Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. Bless you too.
You too. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for sticking through here. And there was a merchandise there promo. I encourage people to download the 9th edition PDF, and I'll show you how to do that in just a few seconds. And then you can put it in a cup that you get from Real Science Radio. I'll show you where to get that too. This one says, never underestimate the power of supercritical water. So it can be a conversation starter at work. And this one says, it sounds crazy until you look at the evidence. That's a quote by Walt Brown. And these are the coffee mugs that are available at hydroplate.org. You go into that store, and then you can hit the merchandise button. And there's also shirts. You can get NASA scientists work for Walt Brown. And on the back, it's got a lot of these unanswered questions, like asteroids with moons and peanut-shaped asteroids and earthquakes on the moon. And the oldest Earth rock was on the moon. And so, yeah, there's some stuff that to get and this one's long sleeve. And you get this one here's got a whole bunch of the stuff that Walt Brown had got right. So that's what we're trying to make your Christmas shopping easy, so you don't have to stand in line. And we give you opportunity to support God's kingdom. And let's just show you I'll share my screen and show you some of the pages where you can get more Hydroplate information. So I'm going to add this to the screen. I am going to show you, let's see, we'll go into, this is rsr.org/HPT. This has so much resources here, and it just goes on, and interviews and answers to questions. It's just, this you could spend probably a month just on this one website alone, rsr.org/HPT. It's incredible. And here's the biblical support right here. The Hydroplate's got them all, and the other ones hardly have any. So you can play with that. That's rsr.org/HPT. And Real Science Radio, they also have a YouTube channel with, I don't know, must be hundreds of videos. And they also have a Rumble channel with, guess how many? 2 videos. Mine's one of them because it got censored on YouTube. So if you want to see what YouTube doesn't want you to know, you can go into Rumble, Real Science Radio. And then this is my YouTube channel, or YouTube webpage. It's solidifyyourfaith.weebly.com. Weebly. And my brother asked me, what does that mean? I said, it means I'm cheap. Saves me hundreds of dollars a year because that's a free website. And you can play around with that. And then Brian Nickel has an excellent Hydroplate channel. He is just incredible how he can animate it, and it makes it very understandable. He's got the best Grand Canyon video out there, so you can understand that. This is hydroplate.org, and we're just going to jump into the store for now. You can click this button, store, and here's your merchandise. You got these books, you got these videos, highly recommended, Grand Canyon, Puzzle on the Plateau, The Horrors of the Flood. Those are from Mike Snavely. You can order them there, and then you can do this merchandise one, and I suggest click purchase right away, because then it goes into the stuff that you can get for Christmas. And this is a way to get the Hydroplate theory into the next generation and also support the cause. And on this website, It also has hydroplate.org. It also has a donate button, or you can donate and specify it if you want to be it, if you want it to go for hydroplate projects. And then what do we have here? This is hpt.rsr.org. Okay, hpt.rsr.org. And this is where you could download the PDF. You just go to this PDF thing. And this is, let's see, is it going to be the 9th edition, the brand new one? Let's see what cover it's got. Let's see. It looks like it still might be the prototype. They may not have the new one up yet, but this is still good. And I would encourage getting this one anyway, because there's some things in this book that will not be in the other books. Okay, so those are some websites you can go through, and we will remove this, and we will put me back up. And yeah, and let's start talking about tomorrow. Tomorrow is probably the most important night of the week, or at least the most important speaker from my perspective. And again, Fred Williams, we foreshadowed that before. Fred Williams, he said that, let's see, he said that there, if you remember that commercial that I showed before, he said that Randy Kaluza invited him to speak, and he started out to say, this is to correct an injustice. There has been an injustice done to Walt Brown. And I encourage you to tune in tomorrow night at 8:05. And the schedule is listed underneath most of these videos. And we encourage you to share the videos, because again, this is a grassroots movement, and the secular scientists aren't doing it. The creation scientists aren't doing it. So we need you to get this theory into your circle of influence. And so hopefully you enjoyed tonight. And hopefully we shall see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And with that, I am just going to leave you some commercials. This has been such a tremendous blessing. Have a good evening.
I want to do a shout out to Randy Kaluza, the current CEO
Amen.
of Institute for Creation Research, because he invited me to present comets and asteroids from the hydroplate theory perspective at their headquarters in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
ICR, and he paid for all of his employees, all the scientists there on staff, to sit in the room. And he started out by saying, we're here today to correct an injustice. That's what he said.
Oh, he did. Praise the Lord.
We're gonna, this is to fix an injustice.
Yep.
Dr. Brown's theory has been completely censored. I'm not quoting, might not be quoting exactly here. But he's been censored, and we talk around here about, hydroplate theory people say this, and hydroplate theory people say that. And we're going to fix that we're going to let them talk.
Amen.
We're going to listen.